Your six-figure salary isn't really six figures, at least not by the time it reaches your bank account. You negotiated for 100 grand, you signed for 100 grand, but somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 of it disappears before you ever see a cent. And where you live decides how much. Two people can earn the exact same 100 grand, same job, same title, and by December one of them has kept around $9,000 more than the other. Not because they worked harder or negotiated better, just because of the state on their driver's license. Let's break down who keeps what. So how does one's salary end up in so many different places? Before we follow the money, two quick ground rules. We're going to track one real, typical example all the way through. A single person earning exactly $100,000 a year, taking the standard deduction, no special write-offs. Let's call him David. And when we say take home, we mean what's actually left after the three big cuts: federal income tax, state income tax, and the payroll taxes that fund Social Security and Medicare. Every number you're about to hear comes from the IRS, the Social Security Administration, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, not guesswork. If a clear, no-spin breakdown like this is useful to you, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people asking the exact same question. Because once you watch David's paycheck get taken apart piece by piece, the way the money quietly leaves before it ever reaches him, it's hard to unsee. Let's start with the cut that's identical no matter where David lives: federal income tax. And the first thing most people get wrong is simple. Your salary doesn't get taxed all at once. It gets taxed in layers, and the very first layer is free. The first $16,100 of David's salary isn't taxed at all. That's the standard deduction. So we're really only taxing about $84,000 of his 100 grand. From there, it climbs in steps. The first $12,400 gets taxed at 10%. The next chunk up to about $50,000 at 12%, and everything above that at 22%. Add those layers together, and David owes about $13,170 in federal income tax for 2026. Now here's the part worth remembering. David is in the 22% bracket, but he does not pay 22% on his whole salary. Only his very top dollars get taxed that high. Average it across everything he earns, and his real federal rate is closer to 13%. So when someone says they're in the 22% bracket, that's nowhere near what they actually hand over. Then come the payroll taxes. The line on his pay stub marked FICA, that's really just two things. Social Security takes 6.2% and Medicare takes 1.45%. Together that's about $7,650. And there's no free first layer here. Every dollar gets hit, starting with the very first one he earns. So before a single state has touched David's check, add it up. Roughly $13,000 in federal income tax, plus about $7,600 in payroll taxes, comes to around $20,800 gone. That works out to about $1,700 every single month before he pays $1 of rent. That's the floor. Every American earning this salary pays some version of it, in all 50 states. So if that $20,000 floor is the same everywhere, the difference in your final take-home comes down almost entirely to one thing: state income tax. And the spread is wider than you'd think. Across the country, take-home on a $100,000 salary runs from about $79,000 at the high end down to just under $70,000 at the low end once a city tax gets involved. Same exact salary, a swing of more than $9,000 purely based on geography. Here's where David lands. If he takes that job in Texas or Florida, states with no income tax at all, he keeps almost everything left after the federal floor, about $79,200, which is close to 79% of his salary. Now move David to California. Here the state takes its own cut on top of everything federal. Between California's income tax and a small state disability deduction, David loses about $7,400 more than he would in Texas, which is roughly 7% of his entire salary. That pulls his take-home down to about $71,800, around 72%. And it bites harder the more you make, because at 100 grand, David's top dollars get taxed at 9.3% by California, sitting right on top of that 22% federal rate. And in New York City, David gets taxed twice. New York State takes a little over $5,000, and then the city piles on close to $4,000 more in its own local income tax. Together that's almost $9,000, nearly 9% of his salary, gone to the state and the city before the federal floor is even counted. His take-home drops to around $69,700, right around 70%, the very bottom of that national range. But here's the part almost everyone gets backwards. When people complain about their paycheck, they blame their state. Look at David's numbers again though. Even in the most expensive case, New York City, the federal and payroll cut is still far bigger than the state and city taxes combined. The state is the small villain here. The federal floor was the giant standing in the room the whole time in every single state. And that $9,000 gap between Texas and New York City is worth more than it sounds. If David moved from New York City to Texas, he'd keep about $9,400 more every year for the exact same work. To get that same boost from a raise instead, he'd have to negotiate something like $13,500 in extra salary, because a big chunk of any raise just gets taxed away too. The state on your driver's license can be worth more than a real promotion. Now, to be fair, no income tax doesn't mean no taxes. Those states just collect it a different way, mainly through property tax and sales tax. Start with property tax. Texas has one of the highest rates in the country, around 1.25% of your home's value a year, when the national average is closer to 0.9%. The typical Texas homeowner pays a little over $4,000 a year, about $900 more than the national average. And here's the twist. Texas property taxes are actually higher than California's, the state everyone loves to call overtaxed. So the moment David buys a house, a good chunk of what he saved on income tax comes right back. Then there's sales tax. Tennessee and Washington skip the income tax too, but they run some of the highest combined sales taxes in the country, close to 9.5%, against a national average near 7.5%. Tennessee even taxes groceries. You keep more of your paycheck, then hand a little back at every checkout. It's less of a free lunch than a trade. You're just choosing which pocket the money comes from. For a young renter, it usually works in David's favour. For a homeowner in a pricey area, it can be a wash. The same salary just lives a different life depending on where you sign your lease. One quick note before we flip this whole thing around. Money also comes out of your check for things like a 401k or an HSA, and that shrinks your take-home too. But it's a completely different kind of subtraction. That's not a tax, that's you paying your future self. It's optional, and it's still your money, just moved somewhere it can grow. Set that aside because we've actually been asking the question backwards this entire time. Everyone asks how much of $100,000 you get to keep. Flip it around. How much would David need to earn just to actually take home a clean $100,000 after all the taxes? In Texas or Florida, he'd need to earn about $131,000. In California, closer to $145,000. And in New York City, right around $150,000 once you factor in the city tax. Nationwide, the bar to truly pocket $100,000 sits somewhere between about $131,000 and $148,000, depending on where you live. Nobody ever puts that number on the job posting. So when you see a role in New York paying the same as one in Dallas, they are not the same offer, not even close. So David's $100,000 salary becomes somewhere between about $69,000 and $79,000 in real take-home, depending on where he lives. But there's one last cut, and it's the one nobody ever sends him a bill for. Inflation. Even the money he successfully keeps sits in a bucket with a slow leak in the bottom. If David parks $100,000 in a regular checking account for a year, at the inflation rates we've seen lately, around 3 to 4%, it quietly loses $3,000 to $4,000 in buying power. He didn't spend it. Nobody taxed it. It simply buys less than it did 12 months ago. Stretch that out and it gets sharper. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, prices are up about 29% since the start of 2020, which means $100,000 today buys what about $77,500 bought back then. The Federal Reserve tries to keep that erosion near 2% a year. Lately, it's been running hotter than that. So here's the real lesson, and it's the one almost nobody factors in when they chase a bigger paycheck. David's offer letter said $100,000, but federal taxes and FICA took about $20,000 off the top. His state took anywhere from nothing to nearly $10,000 more, and inflation quietly chips away at whatever survives. So it's not about the salary you earn, it's about the salary you keep, and what that money can actually buy once taxes and inflation have both taken their turn. And if you've quietly been doing the right things, contributing to a retirement account, keeping your housing costs reasonable, choosing where you live with your eyes open, you're already ahead of most people, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. The number on your offer letter was never the real number. The one you keep always was. Before you go, do me a quick favor. If this changed the way you think about your paycheck, hit the like button, subscribe so the next breakdown finds you, and share it with someone who's about to start a new job or move to a new state. They'll want to run these numbers first. And I'm genuinely curious where you land on this one. If moving to a no-tax state meant keeping an extra $9,000 a year, but it pulled you away from the people and the place you love, would you actually do it?